Hey, it's me, Chris Niccolls from DPReview TV.
Hey, it's me, Jordan Drake, also from DPReview TV.
Why are we sitting together on this log? Well, it is time for another one of our good and bad of our particular brand. And I know you guys have been waiting a long time for this one because it's time to do Fujifilm.
Yeah, exactly. This is certainly a brand everybody's really passionate about, but we really pushed it back because we wanted to see what they would do with both their XH hybrid and their XT photography-centric cameras. XT5 was just announced. Now we have some real opinions, and we're going to go talk about it.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, Fujifilm have developed a very loyal fan base.
Rabid is the phrase I like to use.
Rabid fan, and deservedly so, right? I mean, they make excellent design cameras. You know, they've actually done very well, not only in APS-C, but also medium format. And so, yeah, there's a lot of good, but there's also some bad things. So why don't we start with a good thing? Hey, let's start off on a high note.
Kick it.
So the first good thing I'm going to say about Fujifilm is they've just done such a good job of making many different styles and designs of cameras that appeal to a very broad audience. So what I mean is, they started off, it's no secret, making cameras with a very vintage look, aperture, shutter dials, you know, and everybody's like, oh, we love it. But then they're like, oh, you're pigeonholing yourself into this vintage line. I'm like, no, you, we can do more than that. We can do the XH series, the XS10 series. And then everybody's like, oh, that's all you guys are making now? And they're like, no, you, now we're making an XT5. We're still supporting that classic style. My point is, whether you like a more modern way or a more vintage way, they support it.
You know, I really like what they did with the 26 megapixel sensor in their previous series, where at kind of every price point you had a variety of different handling cameras. Like, let's look at like the mid-range, for example. Okay. If you want like a DSLR style, you have the XS10.
Which I love.
Yeah, if you want like a classic SLR kind of thing, you've got the XT30, XT32. Right. If you want a more rangefinder style, you have the XE4, but they're the same image quality across the board. I hope they do something similar with that new 40 megapixel sensor.
We're going to talk about that 40 megapixel sensor in just a bit, but maybe you have a bad thing to talk about now.
Yeah, I've got one. I think Fujifilm is really focusing on kind of higher end products, but I'd like to see them kind of look at the more affordable end of the scale. I think there's some real room to grow there. They brought out their 35 millimeter XC lens, like a really good, affordable 50 mil equivalent, but I was hoping they would do XC versions of a bunch of their small, beautiful primes, and so far that's still the only one.
I think there's room for them to make affordable pocket-sized cameras, again, that are still decent. I mean, you've got the X100 series, but they're pricey. Yeah. And then you did have the X70, okay, that's not what I'm talking about. That wasn't a great camera, but it's been a lot of years. I'm sure they can make a very sexy, compact, but affordable pocket camera. I think there'd be a market for that.
I think there definitely would be.
My next good thing about Fujifilm is they keep innovating their sensors in the APS-C lineup, and it's just really nice to see. You know, as we just talked about previously, 40 megapixel APS-C sensor. I mean, that's great. It's nice to see. Not everybody needs that, but it's good to have the option. But also the first stacked APS-C sensor that was very successful in their cameras. So yeah, I mean, I just feel like they are innovating. They're not leaving it stagnant. I think a lot of people thought 24 megapixels was going to be a barrier on APS-C for a long time.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you look at all the competition, like Sony's been using that same 24 megapixel BSI forever now. Nikon's been using that same 21 megapixel sensor forever. You look at Canon, same 32. It's really, Fujifilm has brought out in that time frame the 26 and now the 40 and the 26 megapixel stacked sensor. It's really nice to see them kind of trying to push that forward. And you know what, their sensors are great in medium format too, but they're the same ones everyone else is using.
But they're excellent.
They're great. But you know what's not great, Chris, is their tracking continuous autofocus. It's time to talk about that. So I think we've seen a real change in the last few years, just in terms of even how we evaluate autofocus, is we're really focusing on tracking, because I think that's the future of how photographic autofocus will work. And honestly, Fujifilm is lagging a little bit behind. Now, it is getting progressively stickier, but we also have a real issue where we're getting, you know, the tracking box on your subject, but then when you actually review the shot, it's out of focus. You get a lot of false positives with Fujifilm, more than a lot of the other brands. What's your experience?
Yeah, it's been driving me crazy. So, you know, the fact of the matter is, it's not that Fujifilm's autofocus is bad, it's just that everybody else's has gotten so good. I mean, Sony is very consistent. Canon is very consistent, especially things like eye detect. Fujifilm still seems to do that eyelash detect autofocus.
Sometimes,
and, you know, Fujifilm have some great portrait lenses with wide apertures, very shallow depth of field, and then it just hurts when you get that great portrait, but yeah, the iris is still just a little bit off. They do have to do some work there, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, it might not be down to just the tracking performance in the bodies, it's the whole system. They have a lot of these like really wide aperture lenses, like the brand new 56 1.2, where they didn't add a linear motor to it. And we found sometimes that lens just can't keep up with tracking subjects as well.
They are improving it steadily, right? But it's going to take time.
Yeah, we're starting to see LM versions of some of their lenses, but it is going to take a while. The other thing I definitely want to talk about is they still don't have any kind of tracking autofocus where you can just tap to track in video video mode, like every other competitor offers. Yes, you can have like face detection, the subject detection works in video, but what if you just want to have somebody, I don't know, hold up a camera to the camera? It's not going to track it. It's going to try jumping to the eyes, or it's going to lose focus. And I think they just need to have that in the future with all the other cool video features they've got, which is what I want to talk about next.
Yeah, okay, we'll cheer you up with a good.
Okay.
Yeah, Fujifilm have steadily improved their video capabilities over the years with a real emphasis on making capable hybrid cameras, and it just keeps getting better and better. I mean, I remember a time when Fujifilm was really quite behind the competitors as far as video capabilities go.
They were the worst.
They were the worst. But then within like the span of a year, they turned it around and made it competitive. Then they started adding things like really nice cinema profiles. They started adding external RAW recording. I mean, anyways, I still love that even if you're just a photographer, they make cameras for you there. But if you are interested in video, well, what do you like about them?
Well, I really like that they brought out the XH2S and the XH2, and I was expecting it to be like photography model and the video model, but no, they're both video optimized models, but for whatever your priority is. If you're more concerned about rolling shutter and slightly better dynamic range, then you have the XH2S. If absolute detail is the most important thing, you have the XH2, but they're sharing so many similar features between the two of them. Like you mentioned, the external RAW output, having things like F-Log2 now across a lot of the camera lines. And one thing I absolutely love is there's very few companies doing 3x2 open gate recording, which we saw on the XH2S. Now, I'd like to see that on a lot more cameras in the future, but it clearly shows that they're asking videographers, cinematographers, what is important to you, instead of just like, I don't know, it doesn't seem to be a real priority, or a lot of the feature set doesn't make sense. They're very well thought out.
And if your answer is, I don't really care much about video, well, they're taking care of you there too. So, I mean, they really are covering all their bases.
Okay, I do have a complaint which applies to their medium format cameras, which I'm a huge fan of, but why are there no native leaf shutter lens options there? Like, I was just out reviewing the Hasselblad X2D100C, and the whole time I'm using the disclaimer that, like, okay, this might make sense if you need leaf shutter lenses for very fast flash sync speed, but I mean, it's not unheard of for a camera to have a focal plane shutter like the GFX 100, 100S have, and offer leaf shutter lenses as an option. I mean, historically, that's definitely been something that you could do. They might be more expensive, but then we're going to have that fast sync, which is the biggest drawback to all of Fujifilm's medium format options. Just use existing formulas like the 63, the 110. That's all you need, those two lenses.
It's funny that they haven't done that, because as you say, they have made such good inroads into medium format, and we know that they have made leaf shutter lenses before, ironically, for Hasselblad. So, I mean, you're like, you know, it's not hard to do. You're right. They should have a couple to really round it out, and they could have done it a long time ago.
Yeah, I mean, you can actually adapt those H-series Hasselblad lenses, but you don't have autofocus, which you still might want with those cameras. Now, I know their explanation is like, look, sensor readout is getting faster and faster. Eventually, we're just going to have like stacked sensors or global shutters, and you'll just be able to use those instead. But in medium format, that is a long ways off. So as a stopgap, just give me some leaf shutter lenses.
Well, Jordan, no guarantees when it comes to medium format anytime soon, but at least a positive thing with Fujifilm is that we do see a lot of third-party options, and in recent times, even autofocus third-party options. You know, it's like an interesting time in the industry for third-party lenses right now, because you got a major company, we don't need to say who it is, everybody knows.
You can probably piece it together.
Yeah, that's cutting out third-party lens support altogether. And then you've got a company like Sony, who I think actually did a really smart move by allowing third-party support on their E-mount, because even if you're not buying the brand's lenses, you're still buying their body, and it gives you a lot of options depending on your budget. And I think that's smart. Get you in the system, and you're there. And with Fujifilm, now we're seeing companies like Tamron and Sigma making excellent APS-C formats, but for Fujifilm.
Well, and it's funny because you mentioned at all kinds of budgets, but in a lot of cases, the third-party lenses are even better than the first-party ones. And so it's great to see like Sigma and Tamron have been killing it lately, having full autofocus. They seem like fully compatible as far as we can tell, but we're looking forward to testing some of those third-party lenses soon, so stay tuned.
And yeah, Fujifilm, don't stop it. Don't start suing people or anything like that.
Who would do that? Thank you so much for watching. I'm sure you all have some opinions about what Fujifilm is doing well and what they're doing badly. Please let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram. Twitter is a great
Subscribe to the channel. Click the notification bell. You know, we're going to be talking about a lot of new Fujifilm products coming up very shortly.
Yep,
so
full reviews of the XH2, XT5.
Comparisons galore, you know, buying guides for Christmas, whatever. So make sure that you stay tuned. But otherwise, from Jordan and myself,
thanks for watching.
DPReview TV.